In 2025, the United States went through yet another presidential transition. New president, new cabinet, new Congress. But while all this movement happens in Washington, one specific detail catches the eye, and not for a good reason. Air Force One, the most famous airplane in the world, the walking symbol of the greatest power on the planet. This plane should be getting replaced right now. The contract was signed in 2018. The original delivery was 2024, then it became 2026, then 2027, then 2028 or 2029, and in December 2025, the U.S. Air Force confirmed the new projection, mid-2028 at best, with total estimated costs reaching $6 billion. The situation became so embarrassing that President Trump accepted a luxury 747 donated by the Qatari government to use as a temporary presidential aircraft while waiting for the new ones. But here's what nobody is talking about. Air Force One is not the biggest problem with the American presidential fleet. There is another plane, a plane that appears far less in the news, that most people wouldn't recognize in a photo, but that, on certain missions, is just as critical as Air Force One, and sometimes more so. And the situation with this plane is even more complicated because there is no clear replacement for it, not today, not in the coming years, and perhaps not for decades. Aviate has reached 20,000 subscribers passionate about aviation. Our sincere thanks for your support. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Before we continue, I need to correct a very common misconception. Air Force One and Air Force Two are not specific planes. They're call signs, call identifiers used by the American military aviation. Air Force One is the call sign for any Air Force plane carrying the president. Air Force Two is the call sign for the plane carrying the vice president. If the president decided to fly in an F-22 Raptor, that fighter jet would technically become Air Force One. The plane we normally call Air Force One is called the VC-25A. It is a highly modified 747-200. Two of them have been in service since 1990, meaning they have served 6 presidents, and their days are numbered. Their replacement, the new VC-25Bs, based on the 747-8, is the program that is delayed and costing a fortune. The two planes were originally built for the Russian airline Transaero, which went bankrupt before receiving the aircraft. The U.S. Air Force purchased these airframes in 2018 and contracted Boeing to convert them into presidential platforms. Converting a commercial 747 into Air Force One is not a matter of painting the plane blue and slapping an American flag on it. It involves installing military-grade encrypted communication systems, electromagnetic pulse protection, in-flight refueling capability, self-defense systems, and a range of classified technologies. It is an extremely complex process, and it has been going wrong in slow motion for years. But that is Air Force One. That problem is already being discussed. It already has political pressure. Air Force Two? That is a whole different level of problem. The plane that typically serves as Air Force Two is called the C-32A. It is a militarily modified version of the Boeing 757-200. 4 of them are officially in service, although researchers and aviation enthusiasts have identified up to 8 aircraft operating under that designation. They transport the Vice President, the First Lady, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the 5 highest-ranking government officials below the President, and in specific situations, they transport the President himself. That last point is more important than it seems. In March 2023, a C-32A carrying the Secretary of Defense suffered a tail strike upon landing in Amman, Jordan, causing $2.5 million in damage. The plane spent months in maintenance. Situations like this show that these aircraft are not passive backups. They are active operational tools used on high-risk missions all the time. But why use the 757 and not simply a 747 like Air Force One? Because the 747 cannot reach many places the Vice President needs to go. The VC-25A, Air Force One, is enormous and heavy. It needs long runways to operate safely. But many of the world's strategic airports, on islands, in mountainous regions, in smaller countries, do not have that space. The C-32A, being based on the 757, has a capability that pilots describe as unlikely for an aircraft of its size. It can take off and land on runways far shorter than any comparable competitor. The 757's own technical documentation states that it can operate from runways as short as the ones used by the much smaller 732-200. That is strategic capability, not operational comfort. When Trump needed to land at John Wayne Airport in Orange County, California, whose main runway is only 5,700 feet long, too short for the presidential 747, he used the C-32A. Air Force One simply couldn't make it. And that's not all. The 757 also has a range of over 7,600 kilometers with a full load, enough to cross the Atlantic non-stop. Combine that range with the ability to land at smaller airports, and you have a plane that can go anywhere. That is what makes the C-32A irreplaceable, and that is exactly where the problem begins.
In 2004, Boeing ended production of the 757. The decision made sense at the time. The market was changing. Airlines were shifting to other models. New orders had dried up. There was no point in keeping an active production line without demand. But the 757 was not an ordinary plane. It had a combination of characteristics that no other aircraft possessed at the same time: a narrow fuselage, intercontinental range, engines far more powerful than its size would suggest, and the ability to operate on short runways where larger planes cannot go. That combination was rare, and when it disappeared, no one noticed the vacuum it left behind. Today, airlines flying low-density transatlantic routes connecting smaller cities to Europe would pay handsomely for a new 757. Operators like Icelandair, which used the 757 for decades on those specific routes, had to migrate to Airbus's A321XLR precisely because there was no American equivalent. And the US government? It is stuck with a plane that went out of production over 20 years ago and has nowhere to go. Here is the heart of the problem, and it has three dimensions at once. The first is that Boeing has no replacement. The closest plane Boeing offers today is the 737 MAX, but the MAX is a category below the 757 in nearly everything that matters. The maximum range of the 737 MAX 10 is considerably shorter. Short runway performance is also inferior, and there is a political detail that complicates things further. The 737 MAX accumulated a troubling safety record: 2 fatal crashes in 2018 and 2019, a certification process criticized internationally, and a second scandal in 2024 when a door plug blew out during an Alaska Airlines flight. The U.S. Air Force has yet to receive even a single 737 MAX for any mission. In 2025, the Air Force requested funding to purchase a single C-40D, a version of the 737 MAX 9, to supplement the fleet. Congress denied it. It literally cut the budget to zero, describing the request as unjustified. The second problem: Airbus has the right plane, but it is European. The Airbus A321XLR is the natural successor to the 757, widely discussed both here on the channel and across the commercial market. It has similar or superior range, a comparable size, and solid performance on shorter runways. Airlines around the world are already using the A321 to replace their 757s. But using a European aircraft to transport the Vice President of the United States, and worse, integrating highly sensitive American military systems into a foreign platform, is a political equation that no American politician wants to discuss in public. Boeing is the largest exporter in the United States. It employs tens of thousands of Americans. Putting Air Force Two on a plane from Toulouse, France, would be politically unacceptable. Perhaps the most crucial point is time. The C-32As are now between 25 and 30 years old. The Air Force projects keeping them in service until 2040, but without significant investment in developing a replacement. The official decision, confirmed in the 2022 budget, is clear. There are no short-term replacement plans. The result, the political requirement says it must be American. The technical reality says no American option exists, and the timeline says the planes are aging right now. So what will the Air Force do? The most honest answer, today in 2026, is they still don't know. But there is one option that has been gaining traction in discussions, and it is counterintuitive. Instead of replacing the plane, modernize it indefinitely. That sounds strange, but in American military aviation, it is not unusual. The KC-135 is the classic example. It is a strategic tanker based on the prototype of the 707, which first flew in the 1950s. In the 2000s, the Air Force had the entire fleet retrofitted with CFM56 engines, the same engine used on the 737NG. The investment was costly, but it extended the aircraft's operational life by decades. Today, the KC-135 still flies, with new engines, modern avionics, updated systems, but the same airframe from 70 years ago. The logic behind this is simple. What ages in an airplane is not necessarily the airframe. It is the engines, the electronic systems, the equipment, and those can be replaced. In the case of the C-32A, the current engine is the Pratt & Whitney PW2040. It is an engine from the 1980s. Technically, there is no direct drop-in replacement. The closest modern engines in that category would be the LEAP 1A from CFM and the GEnx from GE. The GEnx is likely too large to fit under the 757's wing without extensive structural modifications. The LEAP 1A, on the other hand, would need roughly 7,000 pounds of additional thrust to match the PW2040's performance, which would require integration work but is technically feasible. That would not be simple, but it would be possible, and there is a helpful data point. The PW2040 also powers the Air Force's C-117 Globemasters, the large military transport aircraft. This means spare parts are still in abundant supply, which buys time to develop a re-engineering solution without immediate urgency. The Air Force is, at this moment, exploring the purchase of used 737-700s on the civilian market to convert into new C-40s and expand the VIP transport fleet. It is an emergency measure. It does not solve the C-32A problem, but it takes some of the pressure off. The larger question, what will truly replace Air Force Two, remains without an official answer.
So let's put it all together. In 2004, Boeing ended production of the 757 because the market did not need it. 20 years later, the US government realized it needs exactly that plane and that it cannot recreate it. Air Force One is behind schedule. The program went from $3.9 billion to an estimated $6 billion. The projected delivery is mid-2028 if everything goes well. Air Force Two? No replacement program, no approved budget, no timeline. Just 4 planes between 25 and 30 years old flying critical missions while the debate over what comes next goes on without an answer. The greatest air power in the world may be trapped by an industrial decision made quietly more than 2 decades ago, not for lack of technology, not for lack of money, but simply because a production line was shut down and no one at that moment realized what was being lost. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. If this kind of analysis is what you enjoy, subscribe to the channel, share it, and leave your thoughts in the comments. There's much more to come. Until next time.